Welcome to Fear and Fiction, where the stories are strange and the fear is real. I worked the closing shift at a medical supply warehouse off Military Highway in Norfolk. Get off at 11:30, sometimes closer to midnight if inventory ran long. Been doing it for 2 years. The bus home is the Route 45 going through Berkeley. Takes about 22 minutes, 4 stops, drops me 3 blocks from my apartment. I've made that ride so many times I can tell where I am with my eyes closed by the sounds outside the window. The overpass, the church, the gas station on Chesapeake, my stop. I always sit in the same seat, third row from the back, right side. The seat has a crack in the plastic on the left edge, and the foam underneath has gone flat, so it sits a little lower than the rest. But I know where to put my weight. The windows on that route fog up at the bottom, from the AC in summer and from breath in winter. The light above the back exit has flickered since I started riding, and nobody has ever fixed it. The bus smells like the end of the day, cleaning product, and something underneath it, something that is just the smell of a bus that has carried a lot of people to a lot of places. After midnight, the smell changes slightly. Less product, more the underneath thing. Everybody who grew up on that side of Norfolk knows you don't ride the last run out of Berkeley alone after midnight. I'd heard that my whole life. I never thought about it the way you think about something that is actually true. Last October, I got on the last run at 11:52. I was the only person on the bus except for an older man sitting near the front on the left side, facing forward. He had a grocery bag between his feet and a dark jacket, and I registered him the way you register the other passengers on a bus you take every night. Noted, filed, moved on. I went to my seat, third row from the back, put in my left earbud only, which is my habit on late buses, so I can still hear the stops being called. I must have dozed. Not deep sleep, just a shallow drift you do when your body is tired and the motion of the bus is familiar. The kind where you're still technically awake but you're not tracking anything. I came back when the bus slowed for a stop. I looked up. Out the window, I saw the BP station on Chesapeake Boulevard, which is 1 stop past mine. I'd missed it. That was my first thought. Straightforward, annoyed at myself, already calculating the walk back. The next stop was 2 blocks up where the route turns on Poindexter. I'd get off there and just walk south. The bus passed Poindexter Street without stopping. I thought maybe the stop was flagged out of service. That happens. I pulled my earbud out and looked at the display at the front of the bus that shows the next stop. It was off. The screen was blank. I looked up toward the driver. The seat was occupied. I could see the shape of someone there, and the bus was moving normally. No weaving, steady speed, just moving. We passed the next stop too. I reached up and pulled the yellow cord for the stop request. The ping sounded. I sat back and waited. The bus did not slow down. I pulled the cord again. The older man near the front turned his head. Not all the way, just a partial turn, like he heard something. He picked up his grocery bag and stood and walked toward the back of the bus. His eyes were forward when he passed my row. He said one thing as he walked by. He did not slow down to say it, just said it as he passed like it was information rather than a warning. You should have gotten off at your stop. I turned to see where he'd gone. The back of the bus was empty. I was on my feet before I thought about standing up. I walked to the front of the bus fast, and I stood behind the yellow line and I told the driver I needed to stop, that I'd missed my stop. The driver, I had not looked at him when I got on. I had just tapped my card and gone to my seat. The driver did not respond. He was wearing a dark uniform jacket with the HRT logo on the shoulder. He was holding the wheel. He made a left turn. The route does not make a left at that junction. I know this route. There is no left at that junction. It's a right onto Compostela and then north. He turned left. The street we went onto was darker than it should have been for that part of Berkeley. Fewer lights, and the buildings on both sides were the kind that have been empty long enough to look like they forgot they were ever occupied. The bus moved slowly now, slower than it needed to for the road, and I was standing at the front behind the line holding the metal pole and I could feel every bump differently than I feel them sitting down. The bus stopped, not at a stop sign, not at a light, in the middle of a block I did not recognize, in the dark, for no reason I could see. The front doors opened, the back doors opened. The overhead lights flickered once and stayed on. I got off. I'm not going to pretend I thought about it. I was on the sidewalk before the doors had fully opened, and I walked the direction I thought was east fast until I hit a lit intersection, and then I found a gas station, and I sat on the curb outside it, and I called my cousin Curtis to come get me. He drove 30 minutes to pick me up. On the ride home, I told him what happened. He grew up in Berkeley the same as me, same neighborhood, different block. He listened to the whole thing without saying anything. When I finished, he asked one question. He said, "What time did you get on the last run?" I said 11:52. He turned and looked at me for a second. "The way you look at somebody when what they said does not line up with something you know," he said. "The last Route 45 out of Berkeley leaves at 11:45. I know because my mother used to work that shift. I checked that schedule 100 times growing up." 11:45. I got on a bus at 11:52. The last bus had already left. I don't know what bus I got on. I don't know who the driver was, or where the older man went, or what street I got off on in the dark. Curtis tried to drive me back to find it the next morning. We drove that whole side of Berkeley for an hour. We did not find a street that matched what I described. I have been driving to work since October. I am aware of what that means for my gas money, and I do not care. Some things you stop doing because it is not worth finding out why. I moved to Charlotte in September with $200 and my cousin Rochelle's couch and no car, which meant I learned the CATS bus system the way you learn anything when you have no other option, which is fast. Rochelle lives off Beatty's Ford Road in the West End. If you do not know Beatty's Ford, it is the historic black corridor of Charlotte. Old buildings still standing from another version of the city, barbershops and church storefronts that have been there since before most of the people who live there now were born. The Route 7 runs straight up Beatty's Ford from uptown, and I had been riding it for 2 months by the time I am about to tell you about. Enough times that I knew the stops by feel. The Saturday night it happened, I had been at a cookout at Rochelle's friend's place, maybe a mile and a half from where I was staying. Came out around 9:30, walked to the stop on Beatty's Ford, waited about 8 minutes, got on the Route 7 heading north. The bus was not empty, but it was not full. Maybe 8 or 9 people spread out, the way people spread out on a late Saturday bus when there is room to have your own seat. I went to the middle section. I had my earbuds in my pocket, but I had not put them in yet. I was just sitting there watching the street go by in the dark. A woman sat down next to me. I noticed her because the seat was empty, and there were other empty seats, and she chose the one beside me, which is not what people usually do when there is room to spread out. But I did not say anything because it is her right to sit where she wants. She looked to be in her 40s, maybe older. A dark coat, the kind that buttons high up near the throat. She had a plastic bag in her lap and she was holding it with both hands. She said, "You're new here." Not a question, a statement. I said, "Yeah, a couple months." She nodded like she already knew. She asked where I was from, and I told her. She asked if I liked Charlotte, and I said I was figuring it out. We talked for a few stops. Comfortable, the way conversations with strangers sometimes go on a bus at night when you are both just trying to get somewhere and there is something in the air that makes talking easier than silence. She asked about my family, whether I had people here. I told her about Rochelle. She nodded again. She said, "Beatty's Ford will take care of you if you let it." I said, "Okay, thank you, I appreciate that." And I looked out the window for a second because we were coming up on a stretch. I was still learning. When I looked back, she was not there. I want to be precise about this because I have gone over it many times. The seat next to me was empty. The plastic bag was not there. There was no movement, no sense of someone standing or stepping past me into the aisle. The seat was simply empty in the way it had been when I first sat down. I looked around the bus. The 8 or 9 people I had counted when I got on were still where they were. Nobody near me had moved. There was an older man sitting across the aisle, one row up. He had been there when I boarded. He was looking at me with an expression that was not quite concern and not quite surprise. I said, "Did you see the woman who was sitting here?" He looked at the seat next to me. Then he looked back at me. He said, "Nobody was sitting there." I said, "She was just here." We were talking for like 4 stops. He shook his head once, slow. Then he turned back to face forward. I sat with that for the remaining 6 stops to my destination. I did not put my earbuds in. I did not look at my phone. I sat in that seat and I thought about the conversation, which I could still hear in my head exactly as it had happened. 4 stops of a real conversation with a woman who was not there according to the only other person who would have seen her. I told Rochelle when I got home. She listened, and then she asked me one thing. She asked what the woman looked like. I described her, the coat, the bag, the way she held it with both hands. Rochelle went quiet. Then she said, "There was a woman who used to ride that route. Older lady. Lived on Beatty's Ford her whole life. She passed a few years back. Rochelle says she used to ride the Route 7 every Saturday evening. Same time, sitting in the middle section." I asked Rochelle how she knew this. Rochelle said, "Because she used to talk to people on the bus. She would sit next to somebody who was new to the neighborhood, and she would ask about their family, and she would tell them Beatty's Ford would take care of them." That is what the woman said to me, word for word. I ride the Route 7 every week now. I always sit in the middle section. I have not seen her again, but I keep the seat next to me open anyway, on the late Saturday runs. It feels like the right thing to do. I lived in Columbus for 3 years, on the east side, off Long Street near the King Lincoln Bronzeville district. Long Street is old black Columbus. The Pythian Theater used to be there, the old Lincoln Theater, a whole strip of businesses that were the center of something for a generation before urban renewal took most of it apart. What's left is what's left. My apartment was in a 3-story brick building on Champion Avenue, half a block from the Long Street bus stop. I rode the Coda East Long Street bus to my job downtown and back every day for 3 years. Left the stop at Long and Champion at 7:45 in the morning, came back on the same route at 6:45 in the evening. Rain, winter, all of it. 3 years, same route, until the timing felt like breathing. The man started showing up in October. He was on the evening run when I first noticed him. Tall, wearing a dark coat, the kind of long coat that has a collar you can turn up. He sat in the middle of the bus, one of the forward-facing seats. I noticed him because when I got off at Long and Champion, he got off too. That was a Thursday. Friday, same thing. He was on the bus when I got on downtown. Got off when I got off. The second week I counted how many stops past downtown we went before the stop where he got off was always mine. 6 stops, every evening. He never got off before mine, never stayed on past mine. He got off exactly where I got off, and then I lost him in whatever direction he went because I went straight home without looking back. The third week I paid attention to where he sat. He did not always sit in the same place. He sat in different seats, but always in the middle section, never at the front or the back. He did not read. He did not use his phone. He looked at something in the middle distance that was approximately in the direction of forward but not at anything specific. He held a dark cloth bag in his lap, the same bag every evening. I could not have told you what was in it. It was just always there. I told my neighbor about him. She is an older woman who has lived in that building for 23 years and knows the east side the way you know something you have watched change for 2 decades. I described the man, the coat, the bag, the stop. She asked what he looked like exactly, and I told her what I could, which was not much. She said nothing for a moment. She said, "Does he ever look at you?" I said no, not that I had seen. He just rode the bus and got off at my stop. She said, "Leave it alone." That was all she said. She went back inside her apartment, and I went back inside mine. I left it alone for another 3 weeks. Then one Thursday evening in November, I got off at Long and Champion, and instead of walking straight home, I hung back. I let him get a step ahead of me, and I followed him. He crossed Long Street going south. Then he turned east on Kelton. He walked a half block toward my building. I stayed behind him by about half a block, close enough to see him but far enough that I told myself if he turned around, I could explain why I was walking in the same direction, which was that I lived here. He stopped in front of my building, not on the sidewalk in front of the building next door, not at the corner. He stopped directly in front of the entrance to my building. The front door has 2 buzzers, one for the first floor unit, one for the second and third floor. He was looking at the door, then he turned around. He looked at me. For the first time in 4 months, he looked directly at me, and his face had an expression on it that I cannot fully describe except to say it was not threatening and it was not friendly. It was the expression of someone who had been expecting to see me at that exact distance behind him for a long time, and was neither surprised nor unsurprised. He picked up his bag, turned back toward Long Street, and walked away. I did not follow him. I went inside. I told my neighbor what happened, and she listened with the specific stillness of someone who is not hearing anything they did not already expect to hear. She said, "Don't ride the bus tomorrow. Stay off it for a few days." I asked why. She said, "Something is trying to learn your routine." I asked her what she meant by something. She did not answer that. She went inside. I called my friend Nia, and I told her the whole story, and she thought I was being dramatic and said I was letting a strange man on a bus live rent-free in my head, and she was probably right. That helped for a little while. I stopped riding that route for 2 weeks. When I started again, the man was not on the bus. By December, he had not come back. By February, I had almost stopped thinking about it. Then last month, I got a call from Naya. She had been visiting Columbus, and she had ridden the bus back to her hotel on the east side. She was describing the ride, and she said something that made me go quiet. She said there was a man on the bus, tall, dark coat, got off at a stop on Long Street. She described the bag. She described the way he sat. She said he didn't look at anyone the whole ride, just stared at nothing. I don't know why I'm even telling you. He was just a guy on a bus. I asked her which stop he got off at. She told me the cross street, Long and Champion. I have not told her what that means yet. I am not sure how to. I grew up in Mobile and I left for college and came back at 26 the way a lot of people come back, which is because something pulled you back before you were ready for it to. I was staying with my uncle in Toulminville while I looked for work, which put me on the bus every day because he only had one car and he needed it. Toulminville is on the north side of Mobile, the kind of neighborhood that has been there long enough to have its own weight to it. The Wave bus runs through it. That's what they call the transit system in Mobile, the Wave. My route went down Davis Avenue to get to Midtown, where I was doing temporary office work while I figured out the next thing. Davis Avenue was called the Black Main Street of Mobile for most of the 20th century. There are still buildings on it that remember that, even if the street itself has thinned out considerably since then. I rode that bus every day for 2 months, straight down Davis, 23 minutes to my stop on Government Street. The bus was usually around half full in the morning, thinner in the early evening when I came back. The evening I'm telling you about was a Tuesday in late March. I got on at Government Street at 5:40, heading back north toward Toulminville. The bus was quiet at that hour. I counted when I got on, because I do that. Counting is a habit from somewhere. I've always done it in waiting rooms and buses and elevators. There were 6 people on the bus when I got on, including the driver, so 5 passengers not counting me. I sat down in the middle section and I put in my earbuds and I watched Davis Avenue go by. The old buildings, the churches, the barbershop on the corner that's been there since my uncle was young. I know this street the way you know a street that is part of your family's history, whether you intended to learn it or not. About 20 minutes in, I looked up for no particular reason. The bus felt different, not louder, not more crowded in any way I could specifically point to. It just felt like more of something. I took out my earbuds and I counted. There were 9 people on the bus. I sat with that number for a moment, 9. I had counted 6 when I got on. The driver made 5 plus me, so 5 passengers not counting me. Now there were 9 total. That was 4 more people than had been on the bus when I boarded. I thought about the stops. I had not been paying perfect attention, but I had been on this route every day for 2 months, and I know when the doors open, the doors make a sound. You feel the pressure change. I could not remember 4-door openings since I had gotten on. I counted again. 9. I looked at the people on the bus. 3 of them I recognized from when I got on. A woman with a rolling cart near the front, a teenager in a school uniform, a man in work clothes with paint on his knees. Those 3 I had seen when I boarded. The others I had not. I do not mean that I had not paid attention to them. I mean that I looked at 4 people on the bus, and something in me said, I did not see these people get on. Not that I wasn't watching, that something about them was not accompanied by a memory of a door opening, a step up, a card tap. They were just present in a way that did not include an entrance. One of them was sitting in the seat directly across from mine. I do not know when that happened. That is the part I cannot account for. The seat across from me had been empty when I sat down. It was not empty now. There was a man in it, facing forward, hands in his lap, not doing anything in particular. I would have said he was middle-aged, but I was not looking directly at him for any length of time. I counted a 3rd time, 10. I took out my phone and I opened the camera. I pointed it at the back half of the bus, and I pressed record, and I held it there for maybe 30 seconds while I looked at the ceiling and thought about what I was going to say to my uncle when I got home. Then I put the phone away, and I looked forward, and I did not count again. And I got off at my stop in Toomanville, and I walked to my uncle's house, and I ate dinner, and I did not say anything about it. That night, before I went to sleep, I remembered the video. I opened my phone and I went to the camera roll. The video was not there. I checked the recently deleted folder. I checked everywhere a video goes when you think you've lost it. There was no video. My phone showed no record of the camera being open at 5:58 that evening, which is when I would have used it. My phone shows no record of the camera being used at all that day. I have been back in Mobile for 8 months now. I found a job that lets me drive in. I did not make a decision to stop riding the bus. I just kept finding reasons to drive instead, and the reasons kept working. And eventually not riding the bus became the default. I do not know what was on the bus that evening. I do not know if the camera showed what I saw, or if it showed something different, or if whatever I saw understood what a camera was for and knew how to deal with it. I know that I counted 4 times, and the number went up all 4 times. I know there was someone sitting across from me in a seat that had been empty when I sat down. I know my phone has no memory of me trying to record it. Some counts you do not finish. My aunt lives on the other side of Roanoke from me. I don't have a car right now. Saving up, not there yet. So when I visit her, I take the Valley Metro through Gainesboro and get off on her end of Orange Avenue. It's about a 25-minute ride depending on traffic. I've been making it every other Sunday for about 6 months now. The first time it happened, I didn't think much of it. I was 3 stops from my aunt's stop, sitting by the window, not particularly paying attention to anything. The automated announcement came on and called the stop. I assumed I'd been daydreaming and had accidentally pressed the button. It's easy to do with a bag on your lap. You shift and catch the yellow cord or graze the strip without realizing it. The bus slowed, the doors opened, nobody got on or off, the doors closed. We kept going. I looked at my hands. I hadn't pressed anything that I was aware of, but I shrugged it off and got off at my actual stop 2 stops later. The second time I started paying attention. I had my bag on my lap again. I was deliberately watching the stop request button because I wanted to see when I pressed it, because I'm that kind of person. Once I suspect something, I need to verify it. I had my hands folded in my lap. I was watching the button, and then the announcement came on and called the stop. 2 stops before mine again. My hands hadn't moved. I know they hadn't moved because I was watching them. The button wasn't lit, but the stop was announced. I sat very still for the remaining 2 stops and tried to force it into a shape that made sense. By the 4th time, I was keeping a log on my phone. Date, time, which stop got announced, where I was sitting, what I was doing with my hands. 6 months of bi-weekly notes now. Every single Sunday visit. The bus announces my stop before I press the button. Always the same stop. Always 2 stops before mine. Never on the way there. Only on the way to my aunt's. Not the return trip. And never a different stop. Always the same one. Whatever is happening is specific. I mentioned what was happening to my aunt the 3rd or 4th time it occurred. Not as a frightening thing, more as something I couldn't explain and wanted to name out loud. She listened. She's lived in Roanoke her whole life. Takes the bus herself when she doesn't feel like driving. Knows the Valley Metro routes the way she knows her own neighborhood. She thought about it for a while before saying anything. Then she told me that particular stop, the one that keeps getting announced too early, was where her mother used to get off. Her mother, my great aunt, who passed about 8 years ago, took the bus to visit family for decades. Same route, same direction, same stop. Got off there every time because her knees were bad, and she didn't like the walk from my aunt's actual stop. I asked why the bus would announce it now. My great aunt has been gone for 8 years. My aunt just looked at me for a moment and then said, maybe she's still making sure you get there. I don't know if that's the right explanation. It might be a software glitch in the announcement system. I've thought about calling Valley Metro to ask, but every time I consider it, I decide against it for a reason I can't fully articulate. Something about the fact that it's consistent, that it's only on the way there, not back, that it's always the same stop, her stop. I still ride every other Sunday. I still don't press the button first. I let the bus announce the stop too early, the way it has every single time for 6 months. And then 2 stops later, I pull the cord and get off at my aunt's actual stop. But I have started saying something at the early stop when the announcement comes and the doors open on an empty street. Just a quiet thank you for whatever it is that keeps announcing the stop of someone who has been gone for years. It doesn't feel strange anymore. It feels like being checked on. I don't want it to stop. I was 16 the summer this happened. My parents split when I was 8, and my dad moved back to Knoxville where he grew up. I live with my mom in Atlanta, so visiting my dad is always this specific experience of being in a city that is supposed to feel like half of where I come from, but never quite does, because you can't build roots in a place you only visit for 6 weeks a year. That summer he was working days, so I had a lot of time on my own. I didn't know anybody. I started taking the KAT bus around East Knoxville just to have somewhere to go. I'd ride with no particular destination, watching the neighborhoods pass outside the glass. I had my phone out on one of those rides, taking photos through the window. I do that sometimes. I was going through a phase of documenting everything through glass, bus windows, car windows, trying to capture the slightly distorted version of a place. The east side going by in fragments. Old houses, corner stores, streets I didn't know by name. There was a woman sitting across the aisle from me, probably in her 70s. She'd been on the bus when I got on, sitting with her hands folded, looking at the street the way people look at streets they've known a very long time. I wasn't paying attention to her specifically. I was watching my screen, adjusting the angle to catch a particular block going by. An old 2-story house, brick, with a porch that wrapped around the side. I took the shot. The woman spoke. She pointed at my phone, at the photo I had just taken, and said 4 words. "Your people came from that block." I looked up. She was looking at the phone screen in my hand, not at me, at the photo. I asked what she meant. She just tapped the air in the direction of the phone once, like she was confirming something rather than starting a conversation. Then she turned back to the window. 2 stops later, she got off. I watched her go. The bus pulled away. I looked at the photo on my phone, the brick house with the wraparound porch. I had no idea where it was. I'd been watching the screen, not the street signs. I zoomed in to see if there was a street sign in the frame. There was, partially visible at the edge, enough to read the first word of the street name. I showed my dad the photo when he got home that evening, just held it out. He was still holding his work bag. He stopped moving. He took the phone out of my hand carefully, the way you handle something that might not survive being held wrong. He looked at it for a long time. Then he set his bag down, and he sat at the kitchen table, and he held the phone and he looked at it some more. That's the house his grandmother lived in, on that street. He hasn't been back there since he was a child. He doesn't have photos of it. He never described it to me, never shown me pictures, never said the address out loud in my presence. He didn't know I'd ridden anywhere near that part of East Knoxville. He asked how I found it. I told him about the woman. He asked me to describe her. I did. He listened, and then he asked if she was on the bus when I got on, or if she was already there. Already there. She'd already been on the bus when I got on. He nodded slowly, like this was something he was deciding how to put away rather than something that surprised him. He didn't say anything else about her. What he did say was that his grandmother used to take that bus route for years, all through East Knoxville. He said she was on that bus so often the drivers knew her by name. I still have the photo. I've looked up the address using the street sign in the edge of the frame. The house is still standing. My dad hasn't gone back. I haven't pushed him on it. But I've thought about that woman a lot, about how she was already on the bus when I got on, already sitting, already positioned to see my screen when I held it up, about how she said 4 words and then nothing else, about how she got off 2 stops later without looking back at me again, as if she finished what she came to do. I don't know how she knew. I don't know who she was to my family or if she was anything at all. I just know that she pointed at a house I photographed by accident and told me something I had no way of knowing, and that my dad held that phone like he was holding something he thought was gone. 3 weeks ago, my car got repossessed. I'm not going to go into the details because that's not the point. The point is that I went from someone who drove everywhere to someone who took the Sportran bus overnight with no experience riding it and no real understanding of the routes. First week was a lot of figuring things out. The Sportran is free now, which I did not know before this happened, has been since 2022, so that part was easier than I expected. I downloaded the route map on my phone and started learning it. The bus that goes through Allendale, the neighborhood I live in on the north side of Shreveport, runs along Murphy Street and hooks down toward the intermodal downtown, and I've been taking it to get to everything I used to drive to without thinking. It was my 4th or 5th day on the bus, Thursday evening. I'd gotten on around 5:30, going toward downtown to pick up some paperwork I needed. The bus was maybe half full, nothing unusual about any of it. I had my headphones on, one earbud, same as always in an unfamiliar situation, watching the neighborhood go by through the window. About 8 minutes into the ride, the bus slowed down, not for a stop. We weren't at a stop. We were in the middle of the block on Murphy Street, between 2 intersections, nowhere that a bus would pull over, and it pulled over, came to a full stop, engine still running, doors closed, just sat there. I took my earbud out. The driver didn't say anything. Nobody on the bus said anything. I looked around at the other passengers, and a couple of them were looking at their phones and one woman had her eyes closed. Nobody seemed alarmed, like this was something that happened sometimes, or like they'd stopped noticing. I looked out the window at the block we were stopped on. A regular block, houses, a few parked cars, a vacant lot on the left side, about midway down. Nothing happening that I could see. Nobody on the street. We sat there for what felt like a long time, but which I later estimated at about 2 minutes, maybe a little more. Then the driver, without saying anything, pulled back out into the lane and continued the route. I almost asked what happened. I came close a few times over the rest of the ride, but something about how quiet everyone else was kept me from it, like asking would be the wrong move. I got off downtown, got my paperwork, took the bus back home. The next morning, I was looking at my phone and I saw a news notification I had missed. An incident on Murphy Street in Allendale the evening before, reported around 5:40 or 5:45. The notification didn't have full details. I'd have to click through for the story, but it had enough. The block it named was the block we'd been stopped on. I clicked through. Something had happened on that street at that time. The timing lined up to almost exactly when the bus was sitting there. Doors closed, engine running, not moving. I want to be careful about what I'm saying and what I'm not. I don't know if the driver knew something. I don't know if he saw something ahead on the block that I couldn't see from my seat. I don't know if there's a radio system or alert system that would tell a Sportran driver to hold position. Those are all things that could explain it. What I can't explain is what happened when I called Sportran customer service 2 days later. I reported the stop, gave the date, the time, the route, the block, asked if there had been a service interruption or a hold order on the route that evening. The person I spoke with checked the system log, then came back and said there was no unscheduled stop recorded on that route at that time. The GPS log showed the bus moving continuously through that block. No stop, 2 minutes. I sat in that bus for 2 minutes in the middle of Murphy Street. There are other passengers who were on that bus. They sat there too. The bus driver made a decision to stop and hold and then continue. And the system has no record of it. I've been on the Sportran every day since my car got repossessed. I take it seriously now in a way that I didn't think I would. I pay attention to the route. I pay attention to the stops. And I pay attention to when the bus slows down in the middle of a block. Because it's happened one more time since then. Different street, different evening, same 2-minute hold, same silence from the other passengers, same nothing in the system log when I checked. I don't know what the bus knows that I don't. I just know I've started trusting it. Okay, made it to the end. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Please like, share, subscribe, hype the video, get in those comments and tell me which story was your favorite. Till the next time, thank you for watching.